So I introduced Greg to you guys earlier, showed you his LinkedIn profile. And Greg, can you just take a moment to introduce yourself and tell everyone what you
Sure.
do and what you're all about?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Greg. Have been in the tech staffing industry for a little over 6 years now. Three different companies, but have worked with a lot of different clients. That's what I do for a living. What I do, kind of as a passion, is this type of thing. I love actually helping people with career coaching or interview prep or helping them out with LinkedIn, branding themselves, things like that. Those are the types of things that I'm really passionate about, building community and helping people in the tech industry actually really kill it in their career. So that's kind of who I am and what I'm all about.
How long have you been in the staffing industry for?
So just a little over, actually, 6 years and 2 days.
Wow.
So there you go.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't remember almost anybody's birthday, but for some reason I remember that date. So
So you said that you do the career coaching stuff on
mhm.
the side, kind of.
Yeah,
Do you have do you have a website or anything or any kind of resource, or is this just more people just call you up and you
it's
chat?
right now it's just really organic. I'll meet up with people, have coffee,
Okay.
and or if somebody reaches out to me, I might not have a position that they would be a fit for, but then I can kind of dive into, okay, what are you doing on your job search? How can I help? And just adding value any way I can.
Okay.
Uh, Getting a website is something that I might do in the future, but it's really just more organic right now.
So if these guys were to build you a website and do you a favor, can you get them into a job?
Yeah, I'll do my best. If I don't have it, then I can point them in the direction of
All
somebody that
right.
might.
I'm just kind of kidding about that.
Yeah.
We talked on the phone. You said you worked the West Coast. Do you work with opportunities in Phoenix and Scottsdale area still?
Yeah. So if you guys know where Paradise Valley Mall is, our Scottsdale office is right there.
Okay.
And that's where I worked out of for a long time. And then we've also got, we have positions in Seattle. We don't have an office out there, but we do have a presence as far as positions. We've got all sorts of different locations in Houston, Dallas, New Jersey, basically anywhere that clients need to hire, we can do it.
Okay. And for your agency, do you guys specialize in placing people that work on specific platforms? Like, are you exclusive to like .NET or Java?
No,
You do
no, I
everything.
mean, it's basically, if it touches technology, for the most part, we do it. Some of
Okay.
the lower level, like plugging in computers and things like that, we won't really touch just because of a few different things. But if it's software development or even project management or DevOps or whatever it is, if it touches tech, we pretty much do it.
Okay, cool. Um, and can you just give a shout out? What's your agency that you're with? Is it a trilogy?
Yeah, Trilogy Solutions Group, been
Okay.
around since early 2000, and luckily we've weathered some of the storms since then.
Okay, cool. All right, man. Let's jump into some of these student questions.
Yeah, I've got them on my
So
phone.
Rex was asking, what are the most important elements of a successful new programmer's resume?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on if well, first of all, formatting. A lot of times that is the killer right off the get-go because you think that you have the next Mona Lisa of resumes, and it comes across or it gets parsed into their database or whatever, and it's all jumbled. You can't read it. So keep it as basic as possible with formatting. You want to have as much meat in there, but also a little bit of personality, because if all you're doing is naming off the different technologies that you know, then it's not really showing who you actually are, and that's a huge part of the hiring process. And if you haven't already, you need to start contributing to GitHub and things like that. So that way you can start, it doesn't even have to be anything real serious where you're doing anything huge. It could just be helping out with documentation, but showing that you know how to look at and read a senior developer's problems or issues and help out with that, that you're active in the community and not just here for, shits and giggles, but you're there because it's your passion. Being able to display that on your resume in addition to what you've done in school and things like that, that is huge. And you need to be able to start branding yourself with that as early as possible.
Okay, excellent. As far as resumes, I don't know if after the Q&A session, if you can do this, would you happen to have any resume templates or resume examples from clients you've worked with that you'd be willing to share with us?
So I don't have any specific resume templates. I look at resumes all day long and have for the past 6 years. I know some websites that do have templates, and I can send you those links if you want, or I can take a look at a few resumes and kind of give you my feedback on that as well. But I don't have a specific, this is exactly what a resume should look like.
But do you have any real life example resumes? I know I have contact info. We can blank that out, but just some
I've got
the top 5 that you've seen that really stand out to you. You can share with us, or
definitely. I'll put that together and I'll send it to you after the Q&A session.
Awesome, man. So Rex had another question right after this one. He says, "What on a resume would immediately make you want to reject it?"
So again, it's the formatting. It's not everybody's pet peeve, but if you are saying that you are passionate about software development and user-centric or whatever it is that you're trying to market yourself as, but the resume is all jumbled, immediately it's like, can you actually do what you're saying you can do? Obviously, Word documents aren't your specialty, but that's a big thing for me, at least.
Can you clarify what you mean by the resume is all jumbled? I'm not sure.
So sometimes people, they'll put text boxes, or they'll put objects or images in their resumes.
Okay.
And sometimes, depending on how it gets brought into not just our database, but to Dice or Career Builder, some of the job boards, it comes in, and instead of it looking the way that you think it should look like or how you designed it, it comes off sometimes as just one letter per line.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
because I might look at 100 resumes in a day, I might not want to take the time to try and figure out how to fix that formatting issue. Instead, I might just go to the next one. You might be the best person in that list, but I might skip over it just because I don't have time to mess with the formatting.
Right.
So keeping the formatting as basic as possible is probably a really good idea.
Okay. So Josh has a question. He was asking, in your experience, do you prefer working with a smaller recruiting company or a juggernaut like Apollo?
So Apollo, it's kind of funny. Apollo is not exactly a juggernaut, but I would say I've been in different company cultures, and I prefer the smaller staffing company simply because it feels more like a family. And in my experience, at least, they treat you more like a person than a number.
Okay.
And that's kind of why I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true across the board for any industry. On the same vein of this question here, I'm just kind of curious. Can you explain to the guys what it means if a recruiter says they work full desk, and how do you operate?
Yeah, so full desk can mean a couple different things depending on who you ask. Full desk in my situation means I would do both sales and recruiting. So I'm talking to the client, trying to get new positions or trying to get into a company like Google or Amazon or Disney or whatever. And also, once I get those positions, I'm doing the recruiting. So that's that. And then there's also something that sometimes people consider that, but it's more full lifecycle recruitment, which is what I'm doing right now, which is I get a position from the salesperson, and it's completely two different roles. So a salesperson does the sales job, the recruiter does the recruiter job. I get the position, and from start to finish, from like recruiting to actually signing the paperwork and getting the person onboarded. That's full life cycle recruitment. That's what I do right now.
And this may be the first time these guys are kind of hearing about this. Can you explain the significance of doing full desk versus the alternative where you just deal with the company or you just deal with the candidate?
So it really comes down to preference, because I liked doing full desk when I did do it because I feel like I had a lot more in-depth understanding of the client, and I was able to get in front of them and build that relationship with them and things like that. And so I did like that. Sometimes I would be able to answer questions like culture questions or the questions about the project a little bit more in depth. But now that I am doing just recruiting, I build the relationship with the salespeople, and now I am also in those meetings learning about the company and the culture and things like that. But the cool thing about it is because I don't have to do the sales side, I'm able to put a lot more emphasis on the candidate and how can I help the candidate? What is their goal? What is it that I can help them to do, even if this isn't the right role? And really getting to know the candidate and increasing their level of just feeling cared for throughout the process. And so I kind of prefer this a lot more.
Yeah, I feel like either way there's trade-offs. You know, if you can work full desk and you can get to know both ends really well and find a perfect fit, or like you're saying, you can totally focus on the candidate and get to know them really well, and you don't have to spend the extra brain cells working on the company.
And I've got only a few brain cells to go, so.
Let's see. Mike has some questions.
Sure.
He's wondering, what do you look for when you interview a person? And I'm assuming that, Mike, you're asking about whenever the recruiters just kind of get to know. Okay.
So really, if I've reached out to you and we're already past the stage that you're a basic fit based off of your resume, my first thing is this somebody that I could see actually meshing with the team that I'm recruiting for? And so one of the things, and Jason, you and I kind of touched on this earlier, is the soft skills. Like, you can be the absolute best software developer in the world. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but you can be really, really good at your job and be a jerk, and people will not hire you. And you could also be a really good developer and not be a jerk, but because you lack some of the soft skills, you might come across that way, even if you're not trying to. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you're a jerk. It's just how you answer specific questions, and being able to even have a conversation outside of, can you do X, Y, and Z technology, and how did you do it? But I like to try and get into conversation outside of it, just to kind of break the ice and see if they can have a conversation. So that's a big deal. But one of the things that I see, which is actually kind of frustrating, is when I submit somebody, we've had a great conversation, I know they can do the job, and then the hiring manager gets on the phone with them or has them in person or whatever the situation might be, and they say, they're good, but they just didn't give in-depth enough answers. And so what I try to do is dig in. Can these people, is it academic knowledge, or do they actually have a firm grasp on this space? And so really getting to the point where you can do that, and even asking, did I explain it the right way? Or is there anything else you want to know about it? Do you want me to go further in depth? Just making sure that you're not blocking yourself from getting the job simply because you didn't answer it the way that they were looking for.
Yeah, I've been kind of trying to emphasize that in class. Sometimes we have the students come up to the whiteboard and say, like, make a function that does this. And as they're doing, I'm like, hey, talk it out. What are you doing right here? Just explain to us, talk out loud, and let us know what you're thinking. Because that is so critical in the interviews when you have a whiteboarding session and they're like, hey, write this algorithm, and you go up there, you just crank it out on the whiteboard, but don't say nothing, turn around like, there it is. that's
Exactly.
immediately a turnoff.
Yeah,
Or
no,
probably for any
exactly.
company.
And by the way, whiteboarding is something that you should practice
Right.
regularly. I mean, that is something that I have seen over the last couple of years become more and more and more of an interviewing tactic. Whether you like it or not,
Right.
it's there.
Yeah.
And so being comfortable, not with a computer, but just with a whiteboard and a marker,
Hmm.
walking through, even if it's just a simple thing, just walking through and explaining what you're doing, why you're doing it. And at the end of it, like for example, one of the whiteboarding things that we're doing right now for a .NET developer for one of our clients, it's a really simple problem. And you can either use for each or you can use link. And what we want to see is, I don't care necessarily which way you go, but why did you go for each or why did you go link to solve that problem?
Okay.
And so just explaining that is how you think is a really good thing to do.
Yeah. Mike had another question that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
He's asking, what is usually the turnaround time for a person to get a call back after meeting the minimum requirements? And Mike, is this after like a phone screen with the recruiter or with the company? With the recruiter. Okay, so you've reached out to someone. It sounds like they got what it takes to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And this callback, is that to set up a meeting with the company
with
too?
the hiring manager.
Okay, all right.
Like a second interview.
Yeah. Does that
Yeah.
sound clear, Greg?
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's really hard to say. And this is something, if you are working with a recruiter or if you're working internally with an HR person, whoever it is, try to get that as nailed down as possible. It's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to. And that's sometimes the hard thing about it, is I can, for example, I was working on a position with a company out in Los Angeles. And for as long as I've worked with these guys, it's always been quick phone interview, in person, offer. But this manager, all of a sudden his wife had a baby, threw the timeline off completely. And so there's things that happen. It's really hard to say exactly, but a good turnaround should be about a week or less, especially in this market. And if for some reason it doesn't happen, stay in contact with that recruiter or with that HR person. If they don't get back to you, try it again, but they should be very responsive to you.
Right.
I mean, I can't always answer every single email, or I don't always see every single email, but I try to.
Right.
And so the good recruiters will always do their best to try and get back to you and give you
Right.
some sort of feedback, even if
Right.
it's nothing.
Right.
Like I don't have anything for you, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. I'll at least get a no, like not right now kind of a response, so they know I'm not just waiting around. So Callie has a good question for you. He wanted to know, do you have any tips for dealing with anxiety in interviews?
Yeah, no, I love that question,
Yeah.
actually. So the best way to do it is to practice. I mean, you if you know how to ride a bike or you know how to swim, it's not because you picked it up perfectly the first time and you became Michael Phelps or Lance Armstrong. You did it because you kept doing it. And so if you can get together with Jason or with some of the other students, look up interview questions online and figure out, okay, these are the interview questions, do the tech interview questions, figure it out, toss a whiteboarding question in there, and just bounce ideas back off of each other, give each other critique, because the only way that you're going to be comfortable doing it is by doing it. It's
Right.
not going to, if you're nervous before an interview and you've never done an interview before and you've never practiced an interview, it's going to show up in the interview and it's not going to be a good interview.
Mhm.
But if you go in with confidence, knowing that I've done 20 of these during my time at coder camps, then you feel like you can actually go in there with confidence, and that confidence makes a huge difference.
Right. That's great advice, man. So I didn't get through all the questions, but I just kind of want to open up to the guys out here in class. Was there something that popped in your brain that you thought of while we were talking that you want to ask Greg while we got him on the line? Let me look at these questions one last
Sure.
time real quick.
I do have a question.
Okay. I'm gonna, and just to let you know, Greg, I'm gonna step out real quick because I promised to try to get someone introduced to you, right, from Coder
Sure.
Camp.
Sure.
I'm gonna try to go find that guy real quick, but Rex is gonna ask you the question, and I'll be back in one moment.
Okay.
So let's see, what was I going to ask? Oh, yeah, it's about for new software engineers. How difficult is it for new people to get into the business? It seems like when I'm looking at job postings, almost all of the job postings say minimum 3 years experience, 5 years experience. Like
Yeah.
everyone wants experience for
right. Yeah. So that is a problem. It's tough to break into it sometimes, and that's why it's really important to get as involved in the community as possible, to go on GitHub and just every single week start, or if you can, every day, start contributing to something on GitHub. So you have a portfolio. You can say, I might not have done 3 years of this, but look at what I have done in the community. And then also, go to the user group meetings, because networking and branding yourself is, I would say, even more important than your resume, because a resume can only do so much for you. There's 50 million resumes out there, but if you can get in front of somebody being at the user groups, or even maybe because you keep doing stuff on GitHub, they really start recognizing, oh, this guy, he keeps showing up, he keeps contributing. That's going to make such a huge difference than somebody that is coming out of college or Coder Camp or fill in the blank with whatever, that hasn't done any of that stuff. So your biggest goal right now, aside from learning these technologies, is proving that you have these technologies down by actually being involved.
Okay. Are there any particular user groups that you think are more influential than others, or is it just a matter of just contact with people?
It's tough because different user groups in different areas so there can be a .NET user group in Phoenix and a .NET user group where I am in Springfield, with two completely different cultures. So it's really hard to say. The best thing to do is to go and feel it out for yourself, and figure out which one fits you. Which one do you think will actually be something that could help you? Is the content that they're talking about actually relevant, or is it just people getting together, that aren't really doing a whole lot? And so I know that there are, like, Hacker Nest is a good one typically, but download Meetup if you don't have it on your phone yet, and just look through the tech meetups in the area. It'll even, like, once you start getting involved in that, they'll send you push notifications about meetings that are coming up and things like that. But there's not really one that's necessarily better than the other. It just depends on the specific group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, we're going to wrap up the meeting at this point. I'm going to